And where to find them. So my name is Hal. I've chatted to a few of you tonight, so it's been absolutely lovely to talk to you. I was chatting to a few of you before, but for those who don't know, Power BI is a Microsoft product. Does anybody not know what Power BI is? Never heard of it? Doesn't know what, fair enough, well done. You've managed to escape so far. So Power BI is a Microsoft product and it's a data visualization tool. So we can create graphs, we can bring data in, and we can try and figure out the answers to some of the questions that you might be having. I am struggling working in PowerPoints, for one. So I started with Power BI. It's a relatively new product in the scheme of things, about 5 years ago. And in that time, I've worked with a lot of companies. I've worked with, made Power BI reports for Network Rail, Constructech London, and EKFB, who's doing work contractor. And I've developed an awful lot of Power BI reports for their environment. And the one thing that I want to say is a big sorry to these companies sometimes. Because when I was starting out, I was very much a lone wolf. I started out and I was this Power BI developer. I could answer the people's questions and I was able to sort of do it on my own. There's a lot of resources out there for you to learn it on your own. But I was hoovering it all up and I was really keen to create Power BI reports. But the problem with that, my apologies. The problem with that is that when you get into a company's organisation, you start seeing their infrastructure that they've got there, and you start creating lots of different Power BI reports, it can very, very quickly get out of control, and you can start having all sorts of things everywhere. And very much, sometimes too much information can be no information at all. So I started to reflect and go on a journey to try and understand, of all of these Power BI reports that I'd created, what was good about them? Could I compare them? Could I say that from where I started from to where I got to, that I'd actually improved? And so I was trying to work out what makes a Power BI report in of itself really great. Why do some reports take off and why do some reports fail? Some reports just lack in obscurity. But I wanted to understand what makes a senior manager pin my report to their bookmarks tab in Google Chrome. If you use Edge, that's a bad sign. So what are the features that set all of the Power BI reports apart? So without further ado, let's Darwin this. So the first type of report that I started to create was a Remy the Rat report. It was a cute little report. I still remember it very well. My favourite bit about this report was the data engineering that went on in the background. There's two parts to a Power BI report. There's the back end and the front end. So there's data engineering, data-y stuff that usually involves Excel, and there's the pretty front end with all the graphs and all the presentation bits. So the first report I did was really good at data engineering. So, just like Remy the Rat, if you didn't know this, rats are actually quite clean. The data model that I created was really smart, and it was everything was where it needed to be. There's a maxim in Power BI development. It's called Roach's maxim. Data should be transformed as far upstream as possible and as far downstream as necessary. In other words, everything was where it needed to be. Everything that needed to be done within Power Query was done in Power Query. Everything that needed to be pushed up a little bit further was just that. The second point was this report was really loyal and dependable, just like Remy. It never let me down, and I could absolutely tell when the next data refresh was going to happen. I set up the schedules, it alerted me when it failed. I was really on top of any issues that might have arisen. And just like Remy, it was a really good chef experience. When you start cooking the Power BI report, and you have to start doing something called data modeling. You have to start getting all your different tables and connecting it to the central one in the middle. So just like cooking, you can add too much salt. You can add too many columns. You can overwhelm the dish. So all this data engineering that I did was really lean and really great. 1 second. But the problem with this is that, just like Remy, when I put this report in front of someone, they wanted to launch it out of the window because it didn't look quite as how they expected it. Some reports that you can create are just really untouchable. They don't let the user get to know them very well. They look a bit shabby, they don't look very refined. I believed that because my data model, my data engineering was really solid, really good, that it didn't really matter what was on the canvas, but it mattered what the data meant. And that is misplaced, unfortunately, with a lot of Power BI developers. Some of these reports are unintelligible. They don't talk your language. They don't let you in. They don't talk to the project's language either. What you can end up happening is they start speaking about completely different things and prioritizing the big things or not as well as the small things. And you totally lose focus as to what's going on. And secondly, thirdly, this report was unattractive. If you've got reports that look like this in your organisation and you're familiar with Power BI and you're looking at some of these, then there's some foreshadowing going on that might not be as good as you might think it is. So to put this to the test, I want you to all humour me for a second, and we're going to play a game. What is my current KPI? There's going to be a KPI card thrown up on the screen in a second, and you're going to sort of say what the call out value is. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. Oh, I didn't think it was that hard. 28% there, just for you there. So that's really clear. Obviously, that's very simple. But then the other KPI card that we have is just this. It's absolutely clear, if you can't tell. It's got these slices on the bottom, so you can change it. Actually, this is better, because this gives you the KPI for any date of the year, rather than just a single one. When we tell stories with data, sometimes simpler is better. I can definitely fall into the trap of trying to make a report for everyone, give everyone everything that they need, and you end up making a report for no one. So, a bit of a closer look at this, at this report here. So if you have reports that look like this on your project, then maybe you're looking at it the wrong way. If you see this, if you squint your eyes a little bit and look at all these 3 different zones that you have here. You've got a table at the bottom, you've got some call-outs at the top here, and you have some graphs on the top line. These are all the same hierarchy. The report is treating them all at the same line. You've got this pie chart, which is exactly the same priority as this gauge at the bottom here. 20 documents, all accepted. So you can build 20 assets, but the report doesn't really bring you into that. Let's contrast this. This is an example report that we have. This is on our estate. And if you were to simply squint or close your eyes for a second, I'm sure you could almost picture how these zones lay out on the report itself. You can see that compared to what we had before, and then what we have now, you have this very much more of a structured, user-focused, user-engaged built report there for you. So, your report's robust. It's not going to tell you a lie, but it looks really awful. Why do looks matter? So, for ugly reports, you have this unfocused analysis. You prioritise the wrong things. You're telling the wrong story. You're telling the B plot when somebody's getting shot at over there. The second one is insensitivity. Very early on in my career, I built a Power BI report. And I presented it to the executive there. And it was only then that I realised that they were colourblind. So this sort of type of graph that looked really good in my eyes did not look so good. That's really embarrassing. And it's really easy to get right. Accessibility shouldn't be an afterthought, really. When it's as simple as just putting the right colour palette together, only the right colour palette together, You should not be making those missteps. And then you have this problem of buried value. When you have these problems, when you have this report that doesn't really talk to you, doesn't really talk your language, you have people start questioning whether they can do it better. You start creating your own lone wolves in the organization, and you start creating lots and lots more Power BIs. If you get it wrong, people are able to decentralize and democratize the data, which is a fantastic thing that Power BI does. But if you don't get it right, then people take matters into their own hands and start developing their own reports. So we've looked at one side, we've looked at a really solid data engineering background. And I'd like to thank Saray for letting me manage to crowbar pictures of my dogs into this report. We're going to look at the pretty version of this report. We're going to look at a fantastic report that speaks just your language. These are my two dogs. We have Olive and Sunny on the left and the right. And I wish they reduced the cognitive burden. But when we're building reports, and really effective reports in terms of a user experience, we want to reduce the cognitive burden on our users. And what that means is, we're constantly barraged for our attention, and especially at work. So when we're trying to figure out what it's trying to say to us, your eyes are immediately drawn to it. You've got the title of the report here, and you've got the main call out of the report here. It's going to just reduce the cognitive load on you to be able to make an informed decision about your project. So we've got a lot more white space as well. It reads a lot better. It reads more like a report that you'd be expecting to. Only it's a little bit more dynamic in terms of the data values that it's showing you. Accessibility, we've already talked about. The issues of black and white in a report are not black and white. They're a little bit grey. They're a little bit. There are a variety of hex codes that you can use. So taking time to understand how users respond to the digital laptop screen that's in front of you is really interesting further reading for you. There'll be a test next week. And thirdly, this report, a really good user experience, is really brave. Take this sentence here, for example. The project is delivering the works behind schedule and under budget. Imagine being so confident in your data model that you were able to definitively say that you were coming in, behind schedule and under budget. That around everything you're able to make that statement, if your data model was really good. Unfortunately, effective reports can also be really, really shaky. Sunny will betray me for a slice of ham any day of the week, notoriously unreliable, and when reports start doing this, when reports start doing this, it's a result of the ETL process, the extract of data, the transformation of data, and the loading of data, being too fragmented and too worrisome. When your data pipelines start getting mixed up and they start being undocumented, this becomes an issue and things start slipping through the cracks. Unclean. I do wash my dog, but some of the reports that we have are really unclean. So when we're developing or trying to take over a report, the variables and code like this, so only focus on the black sections here. The number of level 1 assets tells me exactly what I'm doing, but abbreviations of measures aren't particularly helpful. And a lot of them are, the issue becomes when they're unstructured as well. When you have data models that you've botched the recipe for, it becomes really hard work really hard work to unpick an absolute travesty of a data model. And this is where people start getting annoyed and start getting angry with the data in the background. The data's not correct, the report's not correct. It's probably because of the data model. So let's have a look at a bad data model. This is a Gravelly Hill schema, Spaghetti Junction for those of you who don't know. It's probably very hard to see at the back, probably because there's a lot of tables. But there are these sort of strings intersecting and joining up all of these different tables along the side here. But compare that to the data model that we had in the other report, in Remy's report. This is a really simple, they call it a star schema. it is a central fact table with spokes of a star coming out each way. So what you have in the middle here is something really easy to maintain. If one of these fails, then it's isolated to that particular junction. It's almost like an electrician fusing your house. If one part of it fails, it's not going to blow your entire circuit. Unfortunately, with this, I don't know where to start. So let me talk about my experiences with a bad data model and how these come about. Because it must be really easy. Don't do that. I wish that was easy to do. So I had a manager, and he was talking to me, and he said, "You're the Power BI lone wolf I've heard all about. I need you to do me a report based on highest performing employees." So I said, "Oh yeah, not a problem. I can create a data model for you. I put a fact and a dimension together, not a problem." A day later, he comes back and he says, we need to know about how absence has affected it. So that's all right. I can just add another fact table. And then he comes back a week later. So what about recruitment? What about grievances? What about the time and effect over all the places? And all of a sudden, this builds and builds and builds and creates a spaghetti junction. It's really easy to see how, from experience as well, how this suddenly becomes unmanageable. And the primary reason for this is the lone wolf. The lone wolf is a very natural beginning for a Power BI developer. My code is my documentation is a very common phrase I used to hear with my old colleagues. But the problem is that there is so much to document, there's no way that you can do it within the code base. So what I want to present to you guys here is, if you are doing a Power BI report, please, for the love of God, especially my colleagues, if I am taking over your report and there isn't any documentation, I'll be very upset. So if you, Scanner is a free browser plugin, which is really useful to use. You can export it and store it for documentation purposes. You've got Notion, you've got Confluence, but it doesn't matter. You can use a Word document for all I care. Talk about and plan through your processes. With that manager telling me what to do and adding in various requirements, if all of those requirements were up front, I could have created a star schema. I could have had less headaches in the future, and it would probably be more cost effective for you, dear client. So how do we get from being a lone wolf to running in the pack? It's very simple, but I'm really driving this documentation aspect of it. The whole purpose of documenting your processes, planning your processes, designing things up front is for this particular process here. You have your report. You want to review it so that it becomes a better report. But to review the report that you've got, you need notes, you need documentation. You can't just show someone the final product. Firstly, because it'll take you plenty of time to get to that point. But by documenting our processes and planning it through, it really produces it gets all of the problems up front so that you have a clear run at your development, so you can create a fantastic looking Power BI report. So what are the problems of some of this effective but shaky reports that you get? So the first one is heavy maintenance burden. I've already talked about it, but I've spent days unpicking an error, and because one thing breaks, the other thing breaks, and it's a whole cascade. And this is really cost effective. Well, it's not cost effective for your clients, but it's cost effective for you to not do this. So you also have a resource risk. If you have your one Power BI guy, your one lone wolf on your project, all of a sudden he's created a hieroglyphics tablet known as a Power BI report that only they can decipher. So it bears well for an entire project plan for you to actually document this stuff, so that if someone were to not turn up tomorrow, you'd be able to step into the shoes and run with the report itself. And finally, you have this lack of trust. If you've got all these issues, if your data's wrong, if you're constantly chasing someone about a refresh failure, if you're constantly burdening yourself with all of these failures, it produces a lack of trust in the report. And then as soon as people delete their report off of your bookmarks bar, they're not coming back to it. And what happens then? we end up creating more lone wolves. So the problem never goes away. Because they think, I can do this better, I can build a better data model, but they won't document it, and the whole process will cascade again. So, in conclusion, we have a Remy report, we have a Sunny and Olive report, we have some documentation sprinkled in, we have a fantastically robust data engineering solution, we've got really engaging user experience driving that front end, and it results in a lovely Border Collie report, a fantastic report that is smart as hell, really cute, and will keep on running every day of the week. Thank you very much.